Hello and welcome to Smaulgld. In case you missed it, top gold and silver and crypto stories for the week ended November 19th. Another gold game changer story attempts to get off the ground. Just some quick housekeeping notes before we get started. This weekly report, in the next few weeks, I will be making it into a pay subscription only product. Now, what that means is only this broadcast, the weekly broadcast, will be behind a paywall. All the other content on YouTube, BitChute, VidMe, and on the Smaulgld website will remain free. This particular weekly report will be offered to Smaulgld subscribers for a very low price, as low as $10 a month. And I'll make special deals for people who are patrons and also who have donated in the past. So keep an eye on for that. If you appreciate this podcast, this weekly podcast where you can get caught up to date and analysis, then consider subscribing to this. If you're interested in this, let me know. I just want to get an idea of how many people are interested. I don't expect there to be a mad rush for it. However, I will provide this for subscribers only, and you can email me at smaulgld@gmail.com. Let's get to the week in review. So China warned on fraud. Bitcoin had a big battle with Bitcoin Cash, and round one went to Bitcoin. Alchemy was achieved. ECB reminded depositors that their deposits are still at risk. JP Morgan busted for money laundering. U.S. oil exports surge, and we ask, is the dollar the new petrodollar? Trump gets a warm reception in China and Asia. China's bike sharing sector went bust, or at least three companies have gone bust so far. We're going to cover that story. We've also got at least 4 stories on ancient gold and silver finds. And the gold-backed yuan story is fading, but it's still lingering. But there's a new one attempting to get off the ground, another game changer for gold that we're going to talk about. You'll find out what that game changer is. Zimbabwe has a coup d'etat. Was China involved? And it was a strong week for gold and silver. And Fed yackers are now talking down rate hikes. And we saw Bitcoin, Litecoin, Lightning off-chain swaps. We're going to talk about what they are and why they are important to the crypto space. And we're going to have analysis on what gives Bitcoin and Litecoins their values. Let's take a look now what we have. By the way, if you'd like to donate to Smaulgld, you can do so via PayPal, Bitcoin, Litecoin at the links below or on the website. Gold closed last week at 1293.40. It was up 1.5% from 1274 the week before. And silver managed to crash ahead of $17 and close at $17.27, or up 2.5%. Just a quick note, most silver investors won't sell near $20. This was in response to a story in CoinDesk basically saying that Bitcoin holders, or hodlers, H-O-D-L-E-R says, are not going to sell their Bitcoin until it reaches $196,000. So I'm just highlighting that the silver crowd has probably a much lower expectation for price appreciation. And remember, $20 is really a decent price if you're in at 17, because $3 price appreciation on $17 is about 18%. So that's a very good gain. That's not really to scoff at, saying that you want $20 silver, though many people are in at higher prices. The gold-silver ratio ended finally a week below 75 at 74.89, as silver tacked on some gains at the end of the week. During the week, the gold-silver ratio had been as high as 76-1, but it managed to close below 75-1 for the week. It's another point, and we're going to talk about the gold. We've talked ad nauseum about the gold-backed yuan, and that story is fading from view. Many people who had touted that story are no longer touting that story, either because they've rejected the story publicly, or they're just not talking about it. And we'll see. That is kind of an MO in the gold pumper community. They come out with these stories, gold, sovereign size, gold buy in 45 days. They pump it for a week or two, then they forget about it. And by the time period comes where the blessed event was supposed to happen, they're on to pumping another story. And we'll see. As this gold-backed yuan story fades, they've got another one prepared to take its place. Because there will be no gold-backed yuan game changer, gold exchangeable on the Shanghai Gold Exchange. But what I'm saying here is that gold is far more likely to skyrocket on a collapse of the Chinese economy or market of some sort than it is going to be on any of these game-changing stories. That would be a game changer if China has a bit of a collapse, just a small collapse. Donald Trump, I found this during the week. Donald Trump, this is him in 2012, Gold Bug Citizen Trump. He, in 2012, is cheering on the gold price and saying gold just set another record high with the largest physical gold sales on record. Inflation is coming. Gold Donald, you fit right in. Okay, since 2012, we know that the gold price has fallen. Bitcoin. Let's get into what happened with Bitcoin. Bitcoin crashed $2,000. It's all a distant memory earlier in the week because now Bitcoin is over $8,000. But a lot of this stemmed from the Bitcoin Cash promotion. It seems that what happened during the week was there are some people who own Bitcoin and they were upset about the direction of Bitcoin. They don't like the fact that some of these improvements that they wanted to make in Bitcoin haven't happened, that would speed up the network, that would make transactions cheaper, that would allow you to run smart contracts on it. The Bitcoin purists don't want that. They want it to remain as it is, and maybe they'll make improvements as they go along, but they rejected a lot of these added features that Bitcoin Cash people wanted. So some of the people owning Bitcoin were in the process of converting a lot of their Bitcoin into Bitcoin Cash, pumping up the price of Bitcoin Cash, which rose from like a few $100s during the week to about $2,500, driving Bitcoin down. Then things, as you'll see as we go through the news, things reversed, and then Bitcoin ended up having the week ended at over $8,000. So this leads people to understand now that this is a small market still, and a few market players who hold large amounts of Bitcoin can decide if they want to sell and drive the price down. However, it also highlights now that Bitcoin is on the radar of larger investors, that they will use these Bitcoin drops to basically buy into Bitcoin. So Bitcoin was not harmed during this week when it experienced dramatic changes in price, which to me does highlight, and I don't care what anyone says about it's a store of value. It's not. You cannot have a price of a coin rise and fall 50% in a week in both directions and claim it's a store of value. You can claim, I'm not going to argue with you, or I could argue with you, but I'm not going to be adamant, other features of Bitcoin, other things that are good about Bitcoin, but I cannot accept that as a store of value. I can accept that it's gone up, that it's a good speculative bet. It's got a lot of good features, but it is not a store of value to my mind. So what happened also during the week, I think there was some speculation that I subscribe to, that the Bitcoin Cash people, to demonstrate that Bitcoin was slow and expensive, flooded the Bitcoin blockchain with micro transactions, and they all got held up. It clogged up the system, which I guess was meant to prove that, you see, Bitcoin isn't good for transactions. However, they proved a different point. Yes, you don't want to spend Bitcoin. You don't want to use it for small transactions. It's actually a place that you're going to hold on to your money, making it more like gold in that people don't go around spending their gold. They use it as a store of value. So now you're talking about when you're in the Bitcoin circles, that they can argue that it's a store of value, not based on price, but based on the fact that people hoard it and don't spend it. And you know Grisham's law, good money drives out bad money. So sure, people will spend Bitcoin Cash all day, every day, but they won't spend their Bitcoin. And the Bitcoin Cash proponents would argue, well, we spend it and it works. And the Bitcoin crowd will say, well, go ahead and spend it. And you're proving that your coin is good for spending. Ours is good for holding. So it looked like that volume of orders that we saw, those microtransactions, was either a lot of people selling because they panicked that they thought Bitcoin was under attack, or it was people who had Bitcoin, were converting their Bitcoin into Bitcoin Cash and thought they'd also flood the market with some Bitcoin mini transactions. I think that's what happened. I don't think it was a lot of Bitcoiners selling all of a sudden and switching into, although there's probably some of that, there was probably some coattails of people switching into Bitcoin Cash. But as the week ended, we started to see some interesting news. Square announced that they were going to start using or allowing people to buy Bitcoin on its platform. And that reversed the trend right away. That immediately took Bitcoin back up $1,000 and $1,500, and then it just took off the rest of the week from there. But you can see how these self-fulfilling validation moves can happen in these small markets. You get someone to start the ball rolling, and then it cascades, and you get a lot of selling, you get a lot of buying. And that's basically what we saw. But at least the first round saw that Bitcoin could withstand such an attack. And also, I think, given that the players that were selling their Bitcoin to move into Bcash, they really can't pull that stunt very often, because as they sell their Bitcoin, they're not going to have it to sell again. So it's not like the situation you have with the gold smash downs, where they can always find money on margin and naked short and drop the price of gold down. At least now, the way the market is structured, if people want to harm Bitcoin, they've got to dump their Bitcoin. But it appears now that if they do dump their Bitcoin, at least this week, it was a temporary drop, and there will be other large investors willing to come in and pick up the coins, supposedly on the cheap. Now, here's the Jack Dorsey Squares letting some people buy and sell Bitcoin. That was what reversed. That happened Wednesday, and that was midweek, and that reversed the downward trend of Bitcoin. And as we speak on Sunday afternoon, the 19th, Bitcoin hit over $8,000. It was a big deal to get back to $7,000 on Wednesday. It's risen to $1,000 in the last 4 days. Now here's a poll I did here. If you hold Bitcoin Cash at Coinbase, now those people who had bought Bitcoin before the fork into Bitcoin Cash, they got a 1 Bitcoin Cash for every Bitcoin they held, but Coinbase didn't release it. And they're going to release that at the beginning of the year. So I asked, what will you do with it if it becomes available, when it becomes available next year? Dump it immediately, hold it, sell it for Bitcoin, sell it for Litecoin. It looks like only 1 in 4 are looking to hold it. I don't have the results here. I think 40% are going to dump it, and then the other bits are going to buy or convert their money into Bitcoin or Litecoin. You want to take the poll, it's on the website. Now, Trump, he visited China. Now, before I get into this analysis, I generally try to be objective in my reporting, and I don't do much on politics. But when I do, I try to take the same discipline that I have when covering gold and silver and Bitcoin and Litecoin and try not to be a cheerleader or a basher. I know a lot of people go to sites looking for people to bash gold or bash silver or bash Litecoin, bash Bitcoin, or cheer on those assets. I try to do neither. And other sites that do the same thing with politics. They look to bash Trump or to promote Trump. I'm not here to bash Trump or to promote Trump. And again, you can go to sites that's what they do. There's a picture of Obama, and all they're going to do is bash, and there's a picture of Trump. Another site, all they're going to do is bash him. Or there's pictures that, they're going to promote Trump or they're going to cheer on Obama. My objective observance of what happened on Trump's trip is he was well received. From the reports I read, even in the media that hates him, he had a successful trip. Now this one says, oh, Trump and China, look, they show all the people waving. But from the pictures I saw and from the reaction I saw to the speeches, it was well received. Now there are people who, no matter what Trump does, it's negative. And they can't believe it, and he's an embarrassment. If you hadn't heard all of that, this doesn't look like an embarrassment. This looks like people were indeed happy to see, and he had a successful trip. Now, Trump becomes the first foreign leader to dine in the Forbidden City since the founding of modern China. This is CNN. Again, if the United States had no respect and the rest of the world was disgusted by Trump, they were disgraced, he was an embarrassment, they wouldn't have him to this Forbidden City. This is not an endorsement of Trump, or it's the fact that Trump was not treated as if the United States was now something that you didn't have to bother with, and they got this joke as a president, which some financial outlets will tell you it's just not true. And CNN, at least to their credit, said he is the first foreign leader to dine in the Forbidden City in China. So I think that was a successful trip. It's not an endorsement or a bashing of him. It's a fact. I think the trip was successful. Now, the Fed heads yak. Here's one of my favorite guys. This is the St. Louis Fed President Bullard. He says Fed should stand pat on interest rates for now, which would say, okay, no Fed hike in December. But then you got this other guy, Evans, Chicago Fed President Evans. Fed may need extreme policy to deal with future shocks. Now, what is extreme? What we've talked in the past is, I don't think the Fed will ever do negative interest rates and let the rest of the world do that, but they're probably not opposed to, if they're going to do another QE, expanding that into buying equities, buying corporate bonds. The Bank of England buys corporate bonds, the ECB buys corporate bonds, the Bank of Japan buys their own debt, so would the Fed. Swiss National Bank buys equities. So I think you might see the Fed argue, and Yellen has talked about this, is printing up money and boosting the stock market in case there was a collapse. Alchemy achieved. Scientists are certain have achieved what no medieval alchemist could. They did create gold out of thin air. You can read that story. I'm not going to go into how they did it. It's not really going to add to the gold supply, but they have proven the technology. You can create gold out of thin air. Your deposits are not safe. Bank deposits no longer off limits as ECB seeks the power to freeze them. Now, this is basically another shot across the bow saying, when you lend money to a bank, or you think you deposit money to a bank, you don't. You lend money to the bank, and basically you're lending money to a bank that may not be able to pay you back. And if that's the case, we're not going to pay you back. And we want the right to say we're not going to pay you back. They shouldn't call them deposits. They should call them loans to insolvent banks. Some general gold stories. Now this guy says, he runs a gold company, that Bitcoin is not a threat to gold. Well, it is. Because if you look at gold as a financial asset that people buy because they want price appreciation, and then the same crowd looks at Bitcoin as an asset they can buy for price appreciation, and they say, should I invest in gold or should I invest in Bitcoin? They pick Bitcoin. Now, he's right. If you're looking for a real asset, an asset that has tangible value that you can hold and so on, well, of course, and Bitcoin's of no threat whatsoever because you can't hold a Bitcoin. But I think it's the managing director talking his own book, because it is short-sighted to think that money that would otherwise flow into gold has flown into Bitcoin, and you can't deny that, and that will continue to be the case until people view gold as something to own physically and in a vault, not in some allocated account or an ETF or in some digital form, but actually holding gold. And probably what will happen less likely than people deciding to hold their gold for investment purposes in physical form, is you're going to have to rely on jewelry sales, because people who invest in gold, so to speak, they put in the ETFs, either because they think it's convenient or because their corporate charters allow that and they don't allow buying physical gold. There's a story I'm not going to cover about how Germany got its gold back. You know, Germany had gold at the United States and the New York Fed, and it took a while to get back, but it did get it back. Just a quick note, any of you are Cold War historians who take a passing interest, Nikita Khrushchev was the original rocket man. He challenged the United States to a missile shooting match back in 1957 in November. Just a few years later, maybe 5 years later, we had the Cuban Missile Crisis when Cuba moved missiles into Cuba, and Kennedy and crew met and agreed to take missiles out of Turkey if Russia would remove missiles from Cuba. That was little known. People thought that Kennedy stared down the Russians and got them to take the missiles out. Well, he did, but the United States had to take missiles out of Turkey. For those of you who love to tout China and its progressive stance on social issues, this was a Drudge. China urged to stop electroshock therapy to convert gays. The people, they cheer on China, people of all stripes. I don't know why. It's a very totalitarian regime. And that's just one example right there. We'll have more as we go through the show today. We saw another story, and this is something for a discussion, but I believe, and believe even more strongly now, that as we get regulation on Bitcoin cryptocurrencies, that they are going to be integrated into the banking system. We talked about, must have been, this one was a few months ago, 10x, which allows you to store your cryptocurrencies on a Visa card. Well, a Visa card is tied into the banking system, and you can spend all of those cryptocurrencies at shops. UK now has one, and it's a new Visa card, lets you spend Bitcoin like this is like normal money, whatever that means. So this is, I think, a development that the banks and governments realize that, hey, we're going to make a lot more money on taxes, taxing this stuff, more money on fees if we integrate it rather than try to ban it. So I think you're going to see they're going to try to keep the exchanges centralized with big names like Schwab and Fidelity. I think those companies are probably interested in trading, offering cryptocurrency trading. Why? Because they're losing those trading dollars. If you have a Fidelity account, you buy shares. But if you want to buy cryptocurrencies and you're just your average run-of-the-mill guy, you go over to Coinbase and you buy there. Well, that's money that Fidelity is losing out on. And of course, if it's on Fidelity and Fidelity's regulated, you'll get your whatever tax form. I think it's 1040. I don't know what it is. But you get that at the end of the year from the brokerage firms. And I think that's what governments want. They're not going to catch every bit of transaction, but if they can grab this revenue and banking fees and taxes, I think that's where cryptos are heading. Now, there are, and we're going to talk about in a sec, atomic swaps and decentralized exchanges. They will flourish as well. All right, so here is the words were used. Another game changer. Alert, alert, alert. Game changer, shock the world. If you understand, this is the big deal. This is the story now that I believe is designed to replace the gold-backed yuan. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but it comes from our friend Andrew McGuire. So you want to click there, and he's going to tell you, in his words, this is a game changer. And he says, stay tuned for more game-changing news. Almost as I don't even want to tell you what it is, but I'm going to tell you right now, it's no game changer. Just like gold-backed yuan is no game changer because it's not going to happen. Just like sovereign-sized gold buy in 45 days was no game changer. Why COMEX default, silver shortage, the whole litany of these stories they roll out are not game changers, either because they're fake news or they're really not that big of a deal. Most of them are just fake news. This one isn't. This one actually is a real thing, but I doubt it is a game changer. Let's continue on our stories. Well, here's a surprise. Fund manager at Old Mutual Gold and Silver Fund says a good time to buy gold with Fed December rate hike factored in. Okay, well, there's our friend Ned Leyland. He says a good time to buy. I wouldn't ever think he's going to say it's a bad time to buy. He runs a gold and what does he run? He runs a gold and silver fund. Yeah, so I'm sure he's going to go on whatever commodities corner and say, don't buy gold and silver. It's bad time, very bad. Never buy it. All right. Here's another one for those on the, if you think that, oh, well, it's okay that China wants to have electroshock therapy for gays. Well, what if you're Christian? Do you think it's okay that China urges rural Christians to replace Jesus images with Xi Jinping? So there you go. On both sides of the spectrum, whether you're socially conservative or socially liberal, China doesn't want you to have those views. Doesn't sound like they're gay friendly, and it doesn't sound like they're Christian friendly either. Sun Tzu. All right. Now here you go. China warns on fraud. Last time, a couple of times ago, we talked, it might have been last week, about China's own People's Bank of China's governor warning on the amount of debt that China has. Well, this guy here, he's warning about the graft and corruption in China. So these are people in China in positions of power saying, look, we got a corruption problem, we got a debt problem, and the Western cold bugs are saying China is taking over the world, gold back yuan, crush the dollar, internationalize the yuan, petro yuan. They got a lot of problems in China, and China's admitting it, and people are finally catching on to this. Now, for those of you who always say, yeah, but the United States is a debt and death paradigm, they're always overthrowing other countries, they don't know how to mind their business. Well, that's just what a superpower does. Well, here you go. Is it possible that the general behind the Zimbabwe coup sought the green light from China? He was just there a week ago. There they are, Chinese guy, Zimbabwe guy, reviewing the troops. So I don't see how China is for peace and harmony. The only reason they're for peace and harmony is they don't have the military power yet. Yet, I say. So I'm not sure that the world would be a better place with China at the helm versus the United States. And again, it's not a defense of some of the things that the United States does. It's not a promotion of some of the things the United States does. It's just a fact that people seem to think it's black and white. The United States bad, China good. China has gold, so China is good. And they don't think about anything else. Again, that's my own black and white view of the world. Okay. Yeah, never tell your adversary how much debt, corruption, or gold you have. Sun Tzu, The Art of Central Planning. But they are actually telling people. China is telling the world, we got a lot of debt, we got a lot of corruption, and they don't make that much of a secret of their gold. Here's one of the guys speculating about China's involvement with Zimbabwe. But here's even better. So Zimbabwe has a coup. And the initial Chinese reaction is, oh, we're still going to be friendly to them. That's okay. Don't worry about that. You can coo all you want. Coo like a dove. But this is, here's another one. China will not change friendly policy towards Zimbabwe. No, because they want their claws in there. No, not China. All they want to do is fair trade and promote gold. There we go. Chinese censorship of internet is necessary. Of course it is. Chinese cyber watchdog rejects censorship. Critics says internet must be orderly, meaning we must shut down anything we don't want to hear. You think the United States has a problem with Facebook and Google? Try Chinese internet. They're openly saying we must regulate and we must shut down the internet when we need to. And they rejected the report that ranked China last out of 65 countries for press freedom. Why? Is necessary. We must have total control over the internet. But China has gold. That's where you want to live. Now, the US dollar may be the new petrodollar. This is a story I wrote about 3 months ago. You can see it here. I was catching on to the fact that exports, this chart gets even bigger. U.S. oil exports are getting really big. And if that's the case, and the United States becomes one of the top oil exporters, guess what countries need to buy oil from the United States? Dollars. If they need dollars, they're going to buy treasuries to hold the dollars. Well, since I wrote this story here in Reuters, U.S. to account for the most world output growth over 10 years. So the United States is already moving up fast, and it's going to be the biggest growing oil Exporter in growth terms. It's not going to be the biggest exporter, but it's getting there. It's going to be pretty big. It's going to be big enough to have geopolitical significance as an oil exporter, just like Russia now has as the world's #1 exporter. Saudi Arabia is actually going to wane in geopolitical power. So the petrodollar dies, and so what? The United States will probably has more oil reserves now with the shale stuff than probably Saudi Arabia's probably run through most of their oil already. They're not the largest producer anymore. Just as we saw South Africa lose its geopolitical importance in the early 70s when we went off the gold standard. South Africa was the world's #1 producer of gold in the free world. Russia produced a lot of gold, but that stayed in the Soviet Union. So money was based on, the financial system was based on, in many respects, according to the CIA, how much gold could South Africa mine? Well, now no one cares what South Africa mines. And actually, South Africa expended a lot of their resources, and they're not even in the top 5 anymore, I think, in gold-producing nations. There we go, more Chinese economic intervention in the economy. Industrial and Commercial Bank of China to offer 500 billion yuan of credit to support the rental market. Remember, we reported last week, I think the Chinese government's going to buy 20-some-odd% of the retail residential real estate. So this is central planning gone amok, beyond Keynesianism. This is beyond stimulus. This is just a Ponzi scheme. And we're seeing more and more examples of it in China. And I don't think the gold has anything to do with how messed up China actually is becoming. Now, this is just a quick thing. I went through, I was about Sun Tzu and these references, and that's where people think they're getting these bits of wisdom of Chinese sagacity. They understand the world now because they read Sun Tzu, and China is doing all these things according to Sun Tzu, and that's why the gold is going to go to 50,000 because Sun Tzu. Well, if you want, I'm not going to read you these. I think they're foolish articles, but there's a whole bunch of them. I did a search for them, and you can say, the real reason China is buying up the world's gold, Sun Tzu. Here's more of the China is smart Sun Tzu narrative. Just click on that. You can read somebody saying, taking a page out of the book of Sun Tzu. Here, why gold is going to 50,000. Give you another hint, Sun Tzu. So everything, the concept is that somehow China is guided by Sun Tzu, and Sun Tzu is guided by gold, and therefore China's taking over the world because of Sun Tzu. Something like that. I don't know. Here you go. Sun Tzu's 2,500-year-old Art of War guides China's strategy today. No, communism drives China's strategy today. Central planning drives China's strategy today. It's nothing to do with Sun Tzu. Art of War, Sun Tzu. This in Gold Seek. Art of Trade, Warfare, and Seeking Alpha by Sun Tzu. Legend warns, every battle is won before it is ever fought. Sun Tzu's Art of War. Gold to see massive surge above 2,000. Sun Tzu. This was like in 2014. Sun Tzu didn't come through. The price is still below $2,000. Sun Tzu. So as a joke, I like to say about the return of the Roman Empire. Italians are smart. Italians have gold. They have the 3rd largest gold holdings in the world. Read Machiavelli, everything Machiavelli, Da Vinci. Roman Empire proves future Italian hegemony. Italians are smart. See, there's a reason Mario Draghi is the head of the ECB. He's Italian. The Italians have gold. They are smart. Game changer. Just flip it around, and you'll realize the absurdity and the ridiculousness of this Sun Tzu nonsense about China. Yeah. Beach writes, sources say Italy is preparing the golden lira. It is expected to launch in 2019, following Brexit collapse of the euro. There you go. Machiavelli, Italian hegemony. Here, the die is cast. Italian gold-backed lira will be un cambio di gioca, a game changer. Oh my. If you understand, read Machiavelli. Yes, Marcus Aurelius, Julius Caesar. They tell us what's coming. Cambio di gioca. Send your kids to Latin school, for Italian shall rule us all. Read Machiavelli. I love this one. Virtually no one is doing any hard thinking about how it is that a finite Da Vinci is worth $450 million. A Bitcoin 8,000, but finite gold is only worth 50%. Yeah, the real hard thinking, Luke, leads to gold-backed petrolira, Italian hegemony, and death of the petrodollar. Few understand and can connect the dots. Think Da Vinci Code and Machiavelli. Game changer, analysts say. Yeah, I don't believe this stuff about China. I think it's just like you have with Japan, Art of the Samurai. People on Wall Street reading that, dyeing their hair black, thinking it was going to give them some advantage in trading. The land of the rising sun was going to take us over. Japan was buying up Manhattan. Japan was going to take over the world. And then, boom, 20 years of nothing. All right. This week's gold and silver finds. I hope Salivate Metals, I did send him these, I think. He covers these stories. I send them to him. But I'll give you the links here. I love this stuff. This is gold artifacts found in King Tut's tomb. There's a lot of pictures. Russia threatens to cut museum ties over Crimean gold. But see, this is what they had. Crimean gold. This one is huge trove of medieval Islamic gold and silver coins. You got the dinars. You've got all the stuff from like the 1300, 1200, 12th century. 2200 silver coins, 21 gold coins, all nice looking pictures. Another story here about these Crimean gold. Look at that. All these little nice looking gold elephants. Here's one. Roman silver found by chance in Bulgaria. See, they got a little coloring on them there. China pumps more money into the economy. But you got that gold-backed yuan coming. I love this story. J.P. Morgan busted for money laundering. Because Bitcoin is a fraud, says Jamie Dimon. Meanwhile, he's got another fraud case. I did a chart a while back. It showed that J.P. Morgan is paid over $35 billion from like 2009 to 2014 just to settle fraud charges. And he's calling Bitcoin a fraud. 3 weeks later, Swiss regulator finds J.P. Morgan broke money laundering rules. I wonder what they used. They weren't using Bitcoin to launder money. It's absurd. Now, Lightning off-chain swaps. This is very important. A little esoteric, but it's not that complicated. It's complicated in how it's done, but the concept isn't complicated. Basically, Litecoin or Bitcoin Cash, they all are on what they call separate blockchains. And everything is recorded on the block. And that's one of the advantages. What these off-chain swaps do is they allow the exchange of one coin on one block to be made with a coin on another, and the transaction doesn't get recorded. So basically it is anonymous. It just happens. And their Lightning Labs is working on this, and they have done one between Litecoin and Bitcoin. They've done a few. Charlie Lee, of the inventor of Litecoin, which really wasn't much of an invention. He just took the Bitcoin code and copied it and called it Litecoin, or the silver to Bitcoin's gold. But they're working on these. These have the ability to really decentralize everything. Because right now, if you buy Bitcoin on an exchange, it is a centralized exchange. Eventually, there'll be regulated exchanges. But this is a way of trading coins off exchange, not even with an exchange, but just amongst. It's a peer-to-peer type of transaction, and it happens off the blockchain as well. This Elizabeth Stark announcing it. And I had written an article on this back in September about how crypto exchange is about to go decentralized. Zero Hedge picked up on it, changed the title of my story, but republished the story. Of course, they have a better headline, I think. Why governments can't stop Bitcoin, atomic swaps, and decentralized crypto exchanges. That wasn't what I was touting, but I guess that's maybe why Zero Hedge read my article. Here's an article here you can read on explaining it further, the Lightning Network and the cross-blockchain exchanges. Here's a video. It's a couple of minutes long. It's very boring, but it explains. Well, it's boring in that there's no graphics, there's no explosions, there's no shock to the world. But this is actually much more game-changing than any of the nonsense you see from some of the gold pumpers, the way this works. Take 2 minutes, take a look at that video. It looks like that. There's a code running across the top and somebody narrating it, but it's worth the 2 minutes. More information on how atomic swaps, how lightning networks extend to altcoins in Bitcoin Magazine. Here's Charlie Lee making a very good point. Remember I mentioned he invented Litecoin by copying the Bitcoin code. He says all this hard work of Bitcoin developers directly benefits Litecoin. And that's true, because Bitcoin and Litecoin are basically the same thing. Litecoin is basically Bitcoin with 4 times more coins and none of this political drama. And it trades at 112 to 1. So if you just want to look at that ratio, and as I always say, ratios, they're not dispositive, but there is a big discrepancy between the 4 to 1 Bitcoin to Litecoin to Bitcoin coins and the 112 to 1 price. This guy is the new Bitcoin poster child. He's the guy, this guy, Mike Novogratz, who purchased Bitcoin in big amounts after the big dump in earlier in the week that drove Bitcoin down a few $1,000s. He basically picked up those coins at the bottom and drove it back up. And he's saying it's going to be 20,000 by December 2018, which if you take your Bitcoin Litecoin ratio, that would mean Litecoin would be $5,000. I'm not predicting that. I'm just saying that's what it would be if you had a 4 to 1 ratio. Litecoin right now is only $70. Yeah. So this woman, Sarah Eisen, I think she works for, let's see where she works. She's a broadcaster, I believe, or a journalist. She tweeted out that since, and this was earlier in the week, so it's gone up even more. She was saying that since Jamie Dimon labeled Bitcoin a fraud, that the price has risen 95%. So basically it's doubled since, she's at CNBC, since he called it a fraud. So I wrote here, Jamie, please call Litecoin a fraud. Could use a double there for the Litecoin holders. Yeah, so as I mentioned, the reason I don't like the ratios, like for gold and silver, is they're 2 different metals. It doesn't really matter that there's 16 times more, only 10 times more gold and silver. They're different metals. You know, I like to use the expression, there's more Picasso artwork than there is mine. It's not dispositive that there's more one or the other. However, and there's different uses for gold, silver, different colors, different demand, different densities, properties, and so on. So the rarity is not as important. But Bitcoin and Litecoin are basically the same code. They do the same thing. So I would argue that if you're going to look for a ratio, there's a much closer correlation between Bitcoin and Litecoin than there is between gold and silver. Gold and silver are even different colors. All right. Let's see what else we have. All right, so here is an analysis I want to go through why Bitcoin is rising and why it probably will continue to rise. If you look at the art market, and there's something like a Miro or a Picasso, very few people, very few, as part of the global population, even know what a ledger painting or a Miro painting is. A lot of people heard of Picasso. And very few even want one. No one. The average guy wakes up in the morning living in Canarsie or living in Des Moines, Iowa, or somewhere in India or somewhere in Africa, doesn't wake up and say, I got to have me a Miro. They don't even know what it is. But yet, you can get millions of dollars for these Miro paintings. And look him up. He's an artist. Actually, he's Catalonian. His name is Juan, but it's spelled J-O-A-N. In any event, my point is, you have to start looking at markets differently when you look at these markets like Bitcoin or the art market. So, my point is, it's not a pump and dump. I was arguing with Paul Gambles, who's I think he's a fund manager. Some good conversations with him on Twitter. But my point is that there's a small number of investors, just as there are a small number of art collectors, that are interested in Bitcoin or interested in art or ledger or Miro in particular. And it doesn't require widespread acknowledgement or widespread number of people interested in art or Bitcoin. It just requires enough people in the market to be interested. And if there's enough people that think Bitcoin is a big deal, for example, it's not going to take 50% of investors to think this Bitcoin thing is great. No, it only has to take a few people, not a few, but more than a handful of Novogratz type people who think that Bitcoin's the way to go. They got a lot of money. They want to put in money into it. It's going to go higher. It's the same with art. You and I don't have to go out and bid on Moreau for it to go higher. I don't even want it. I might want it, but most people don't want it. And I certainly don't want it for $30 million. That's for sure. Just like many people look and say, I would never pay $8,000 for Bitcoin. What a waste of money. You don't have to. Price can go higher whether you're in. That's what I learned 2 years ago. What I think about Bitcoin is irrelevant. I have to look at what the market thinks about it. And the market isn't everybody like me and you and everybody else. No, the market for Bitcoin, just like the market for artwork, are the people that are interested in Bitcoin, the people that are interested in art. They're the ones that give it value, not the people who don't think it's worth any value. So here's an example. This may even drive it home further. I could argue, well, first of all, you look at the intrinsic argument. You say, look, it's just a bunch of numbers. Okay. Well, all a Moreau is a bunch of paint on canvas. It's got no intrinsic value. I can slap paint on the canvas. You can do it too. It's the arrangement of that paint on the canvas, just like it is the arrangement of those numbers that make it Bitcoin. Well, you could say, well, it's still worthless. Okay. And then Moreau is worthless too. It's just a bunch of paint on canvas. And I'll give you one further. Subscription newsletters. Now, I'm talking about $100 or $200 tops for mine, but there are people who charge thousands of dollars for subscriptions. You could argue that's a complete waste of money. That's just a bunch of letters and symbols on a screen that you get, and you blow $1,200 a month on it. However, and I would say virtually, statistically, the entire world thinks that those newsletters are completely and utterly of no value. But somehow, there are people that are going to pay $1,200 for these newsletters. Why? The market for the newsletter is not the people who don't want it. The market for the newsletter is the people that want this thing, just like the market for Bitcoin are the people who want it. So it doesn't matter. You can line up 1,000 people and say, I would never buy Bitcoin. What a waste of money. And I can show you nobody's interested in Bitcoin. That's fine. It doesn't take the whole world to be bidding on Bitcoin to make it go to $100,000. The same with a Moreau painting or Picasso, Ledger, any of these artists, Van Gogh. See, people, I don't want to use Van Gogh or Monet. People know those names. They use a little more obscure names, but still big names in the art world. And people are willing to pay for it. But the rest of the world isn't. So that's why I think Bitcoin is going to go higher, because there seems to be enough diehard people that actually think, look, there are people who think Bitcoin's changing the world. They actually believe that. They believe that Bitcoin is going to do this, it's going to do that, it's going to end central banking. They believe that it's your like moral and civic duty to buy it. There's enough people out there that feel that way. Well, they're going to buy something that there's only 21 million of. They don't care if you don't buy it. You not buying it doesn't detract from its value. Just as you not buying a Moreau painting or even bidding on a Moreau painting doesn't make the price go lower. And that was the big wake up for me, to understand that it doesn't matter what I think. It doesn't matter what 99 out of 100 people think. It's define the market. What do the people in that market think that asset is worth? Whether it's a Moreau painting, a Litecoin, or even a subscription newsletter. So, for example, when I charge my whatever it is for this broadcast, statistically, no one in the world would be interested in this broadcast. However, I might find 300 or 400 people will think it's worth $100, $200. Well, then that's what it's worth. It doesn't matter that no one else in the world wants to look at it. Anyway, that's how I've been looking at things lately. Let me know what you think. There's some more here. You can read it, my analysis. But I think I covered most of the points. I don't want to just read to you what I tweeted. You can always check that out. But I did repost them here. Yeah, here, the crypto bugs investors, they're the ones who are ascribing value. Just as art collectors ascribe value to what you and I might see as splotches of paint on a canvas as worthless, they see that as $70 million art. Our opinion is 100% irrelevant. So the VC guy saying Bitcoin's a store of value. See, whether I think it is or not, and whether I can convince 1 million people that Bitcoin's not a store of value, that doesn't mean anything. The whole world can think it's not a store of value. In fact, the whole world can think that Bitcoin sucks. As long as there are a certain number of people with a certain amount of investable dollars to bid on it, it'll go higher. Here's basically a story to confirm what I was saying, that Bitcoin's status as digital gold is, yeah, you can't use Bitcoin. It's expensive to use. It's clunky to use. It takes a long time to use. So you hold on to it, just like gold. Gold is not the best way to transfer money from one party to the other. Try buying a dozen eggs and a cup of coffee with a gold coin. You could do it, but you're better off not doing it. And I guess that's what's happening. They're saying with gold. And here we go. Bitcoin cracks $8,000, an all-time high, and crypto hippies rejoice. All those bubbles there. For those of you Tesla fan, Tesla rolls out battery-powered truck. And this is supposed to be a big deal. Another money-losing enterprise. Boy subsidies, latest money-losing project. And if this doesn't work, he's going to roll out, what, electric tanks to try to get subsidies, or battery-powered aircraft. Here's your, I like this picture from our Smaulgld subscribers guest, and Renf. He's showing the Pied Piper in this particular tweet. Tesla, and I call it a, what do I call this here? A government-sponsored parade. There it is, with what's his name at the top. Follow this guy, he's good. All right, now, collapse of Chinese bike sharing sector. There is a company, no joke, it's called Black Hole Capital, and they put money behind this company called Blue Gogo, which is a bike sharing company in China, and I think it had, for 4 months, it was working in San Francisco. Well, they raised $60 million, and they went out of business. Basically, they had some app, and like you'd go up to a bike on the street, and it would unlock you pay a certain amount of money, an annual subscription, and then you would get a bike on the street, and somehow it didn't work anymore. It's because the company was going bankrupt. Well, I didn't realize this is a multi-billion-dollar investment in China. I guess you got 1.5 billion people. A lot of them riding around on bikes, and they don't want to buy them, so they buy these, they rent them, or they share them. I don't know how it works, but 3 companies, Wukong, 3V Bike, and Ding Ding also went belly up, as well as Blue Gogo. But there's 2 other companies that have raised $1 billion each, Mobike and Ofo. I think Ofo is backed by Alibaba, and apparently it's the Wild East out there, as China calls for tighter regulations on these bike sharing companies, which looks like billions of dollars have been invested in, and looks like it's got a flat tire. Here, China's bike sharing bubble goes bust. I'm not surprised. There's nothing backing these bikes, said a concerned resident, urging for gold-backed bikes. That's my quote. Well, the gold-backed yuan story bites the dust. We've had many people say, look, Luke Groman, he is a gold analyst. I never said China would back anything with gold. They'd be crazy to do so, in my opinion, and I agree. And then we also had, I think, Grant Williams also agreeing that there is no gold-backed yuan coming. Alistair McLeod. Interesting, the 3 of them were all cited in the Nikkei Asian Review story. Their quotes didn't say there would be a gold-backed yuan, but the story touted that, and that's what people have focused on. But we see now that that's probably not going to happen. But again, it's just one in the line of these stories about something that's going to change the game and drive the price of gold higher. Sovereign-sized gold buy, COMEX default, silver shortage. Here's why COMEX won't default. They wrote an article on this. Of course, it hasn't happened. It's not going to happen. No, someone's going to stand for delivery. Of course they are. Look, here's some advice for the Litecoin people. to justify Litecoin 5,000. Just use the silver pumpers language. Litecoin shortage. Sovereign size Litecoin buy in 45 days. Litecoin back petro yuan. Bitcoin Litecoin ratio unsustainable at 112 to 1. Yep, and here's Grant telling me, look, if people want to peddle this as game changing, that's up to them. People want to believe a gold back story, that's fine, but maybe it'll happen one day, but not yet, and I agree with that as well. And this story hasn't aged well. China sees new world order with oil benchmark backed by gold. China is expected shortly to launch a crude oil futures contract priced in yuan and convertible into gold, and what analysts say could be game changer. It's not there, but that's what it says. Here's a guy who reads the Asian Nikkei review. This guy used to work at Goldman Sachs. The plan is to price oil in yuan using a gold-backed futures contract. Yeah, the plan according to whom? Asian Nikkei review. Gold-backed yuan. See, the story still lingers. This guy is supposed to be a smart, respected analyst. He worked at Goldman Sachs, and now he's an economist. And its dollar's going to lose its kingpin status because of this gold-backed yuan story. Here, Hong Kong soccer fans defy Beijing by booing Chinese national anthem. Everyone loves China. China's got gold. Everyone loves football. Look at those empty seats there. Boycotting on Veterans Day. What if they organized a boycott and no one showed up? That's a joke. All right, there's China. We've seen this before. This is just basically China's gold relative to its debt. Even at $13,000, that's a stretch that gold will go there. They're still far, 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 far in debt. There was a story here. Yeah, I expect this is Russian propaganda. They said Russia adds gold as it dumps treasuries. That's not true at all. Russia gobbles up more gold, dumps your U.S. treasuries. It's funny, the story didn't even say anything about dumping treasuries. The story didn't even note how many treasuries they had. Why? Because if they did, they would see Russia is not dumping treasuries. But propaganda is propaganda. As long as, see, again, this is, and Grant pointed this out to me, Grant Williams, don't pay attention to the headline. Well, that's what these people do. They write the headline, gold back yuan coming. What do you expect people to think? If you say Russia is dumping treasuries, and then the story doesn't say Russia is dumping treasuries, you're supposed to ignore that headline? Why put out fake headlines then? Russia's dumping treasuries, Russia insider. That's not dumping treasuries. That's adding treasuries, if you look at that chart there. Adding them in a significant way. Gold Louis Vuitton toilet for sale for 100 grand. And China's second in the world in adding household debt. Here's one about peak China. There's a lot of stories now coming out about people really criticizing or highlighting the real weaknesses in the Chinese economy. Here's one. We had perpetual bonds. We talked about last time where the Chinese companies, they don't put the debt on their books as debt if the maturities are so long they figure they'll never have to pay it back, so they list them as equity. Well, there's this story here where now you can buy liquor. You pay $1,600 and you get a lifetime's worth of liquor, perpetual liquor. Another scam. It sounds like coming out of China. Let's see. We're almost done here. Sun Tzu. Oh, never forget Sun Tzu. Here's Andy Hoffman, who is now a Bitcoin analyst, used to be a gold and silver analyst, complaining about manipulation in the, which it probably is in the Bitcoin market. But again, he's gone from one manipulated market to the other. So I guess he fits right in. He knows what to say when you talk about manipulation. Game changer, if you understand. Look at all this. I think we're going to cut it short. I mean, we've got enough here. But here, the world needs to prepare for peak China. So the story is getting out there about the Chinese story is not the best story. And that does about do it. We only did one blog post during the week. We did the Shanghai Gold Exchange numbers, headed towards its third best year ever. There's a blog post. There is a video on that. And I'll continue to put those blog posts out, continue to do those videos. They'll be available to you on BitChute, VidMe, YouTube until they throw me off. And they'll always be on the Smaulgld website. It's just this long week in review that you can sit down on a Sunday, have your coffee, your breakfast, your lunch, whatever it is, and spend an hour and get caught up. Also, with your subscription, you'll be able to email me. We'll do private chats, forums. So those that want the in-depth analysis, don't just want to read Game Changer on 12 different sites, you can come here and we can have an intelligent discussion. Thank you very much for listening.